right up until the day he died. I mean, there are just things that I've seen in books, and I said this wasn't what I witnessed. This wasn't the person I loved. This wasn't how he was those last, 9 months, and I was with him 98% of the time.
For decades, rumors surrounded Elvis Presley's final days, his health, his heartbreaks, his habits. But after years of speculation, Ginger Alden has finally spoken, and what she's revealed about Elvis Presley is shaking his legacy. At 68, the woman who shared his final moments is ready to tell the truth about the events surrounding his final days. From their intense relationship to the shocking moments inside Graceland, Ginger confirms what many feared and what few expected. Join us as we find out what kind of man Elvis Presley really was. Ginger and Elvis, a love story. Ginger Alden was born on November 13, 1956, at the United States Naval Hospital in Millington, Tennessee. She grew up in a family with strong ties to the military. Her father worked in public relations for the United States Army, and that kind of background brought a sense of structure to her early life. From a young age, she stepped into beauty pageants, trying to make something of herself. Slowly, she found her way into the world of modeling. She carried herself with confidence and grace, and that helped her move ahead. Things changed in a big way when she crossed paths with Elvis Presley again. The first time she met him, she was only 5. Years passed before their lives came together again. By then, Ginger was 20. Ginger and her sisters were invited to Graceland around the same time when Presley had recently ended things with Linda Thompson, and that visit started something unexpected. She found herself pulled toward Presley right away. The feeling seemed strong on both sides. From that point on, her life started to revolve around him, and everything began to move quickly. Their relationship didn't take long to grow. Just 2 months after they began seeing each other, Presley proposed. The ring he gave her wasn't just big. He had taken the diamond from his TCB stage ring and made it into an engagement ring for her. It stood out because he had only proposed to one other woman before, Priscilla, who had been his wife until they separated. They set the wedding for December 25, 1977, but life stepped in and took things in another direction. Though their romance was short, yet it became intense in that short time. From Ginger's side, it felt like she had found what she had been searching for. She thought Presley really saw her for who she was, but not everyone around him saw things that way. His close group of friends, often called the didn't accept her the way they had others before her. They believed she didn't belong in that world. They saw something different in her, and didn't believe she had the same connection with Presley that someone like Linda Thompson had. Even though they doubted her, Presley seemed to stick by his decision. She remembered the way he had proposed to her, holding the ring behind his back in a velvet box. That moment stayed with her for a long time. She believed their time together had meaning, but others close to Presley started to worry. His father, Vernon, didn't think the marriage would really happen. Presley also gave vague answers when asked about the wedding. That made people think he had not actually made up his mind. There was confusion around what would happen next. Then, everything came to a sudden end. On August 16, 1977, Presley passed away from heart failure. Ginger was the one who found him that morning. His demise shocked the world. Many rumors spread about what really happened and what shape he was in when he passed away. Some stories painted him in a bad light, saying he was alone and had fallen apart, but Ginger tried to stop those ideas from spreading. She believed he had been hopeful near the end and wanted to take control of his life again. In her memoir, Elvis and Ginger, she spoke about what went on behind the scenes. She shared both the good and the difficult times. She wrote about one moment when he struck her and later said he was sorry. She also mentioned how he fired a gun at a television and threw food during a fight about his weight. These stories showed another side of Presley, one that people hadn't seen before. Still, Ginger held on to how he had tried to get better before his demise. He had wanted to go back on stage. He had made plans and seemed excited about what was coming next. Even though she had been close to him during his final days, some people never accepted her place in his life. His uncle, Vester Presley, told the media that the family didn't see her as one of them. He also said she had tried to use Presley's name for her own gain. Those words only made things harder for her. When the attention faded, she had to find a way to move on. She went back to modeling and acting, trying to stand on her own. She worked hard to build a different life, one that didn't always bring Presley's shadow with it. Still, she needed a way to remember him.
I wrote down all of my memories. Shortly after Elvis passed away, it was just my way of holding on. You know, I wanted to hold on and not forget. And time went on.
In 2014, she released her memoir and gave people her side of the story. She opened up about her life with Presley and what she saw in him during those final months. Then something strange and painful happened. Her then-husband, Ron Leiser, passed away on August 16, 2015, exactly 38 years after Presley passed. That date brought back pain. She had to face the loss of another person she loved, and it brought old memories flooding back. Ginger Alden may have only been with Elvis Presley for a short time, but her presence in the final chapter of his life still stands out. Their fast-moving relationship, their plans for the future, and the sudden end all shaped her story. She shared what she remembered and held on to those final days with honesty. Her account helped shape how people looked back at Presley's last moments. Their story, though short, was full of turning points and left behind pieces that still speak today. Let's take a look at some of her experiences. The struggle for control. Fame followed Elvis Presley everywhere, but he never got used to it. From the beginning, he worked hard to stay in control of his personal life. He didn't let just anyone in, and when he did, he made sure they followed his rules. Ginger Alden found this out almost as soon as she met him. It didn't take long before she noticed how much Elvis wanted to take charge of everything around him. That small moment told her something important. Elvis didn't like anyone else making decisions. From then on, Elvis wanted her beside him at all times. Like he had done with his past girlfriend, Linda Thompson, he made sure Ginger stopped seeing other people. One day, he handed her the phone and told her to call the man she had been dating and end things right away. Ginger felt pushed into it, but she made the call. That wasn't the only time Elvis tried to control what she did. Whenever she disagreed or held back, it upset him. He didn't like being told no. She also noticed that Elvis had trouble dealing with the men who worked for him. Some of his longtime friends, like Marty Lacker and Joe Esposito, were no longer around as much. They lived far away in California. Others, like Lamar Fike, didn't seem to have a clear role anymore. Elvis still kept Charlie Hodge close, but even that relationship had started to wear thin. One night, after Charlie drank too much and smashed his hand through a window, Elvis lost his temper. He said he was tired of dealing with problems like that and planned to make changes. Not long after, Elvis slipped while coming down the stairs during a show in Milwaukee. He blamed the fall on the people around him and said he was going to fire several of them. Ginger tried to remind him he had plenty of people in his life, but Elvis felt otherwise. He believed they stayed near him only because they were being paid. Ginger soon saw how fast Elvis could lose control. One day, when she didn't call her former boyfriend quickly enough, Elvis became angry. He picked up a bottle of Gatorade and threw it hard against the wall. Ginger felt uneasy, but she also took it as a sign that Elvis cared deeply. It didn't make much sense, but she wanted to believe his emotions were tied to love. Still, the truth was harder to accept. Later on, she had an experience that shook her deeply. One morning, she was woken up by a loud sound. She sat up in bed and saw Elvis standing nearby holding a Magnum pistol. When she looked behind her, she saw a hole in the wall just above the headboard. Elvis told her he had asked for yogurt and hadn't gotten an answer. He said the gunshot was just meant to get her attention. Ginger was shocked and hurt, but when he apologized, she believed he meant it. That moment stayed with her, but it didn't stop her from staying with him. It wasn't the last time she would hear gunfire inside the house. Another time, Elvis got annoyed by a running toilet in the bathroom. It bothered him so much that he grabbed a gun and fired at it until it was completely destroyed. Ginger couldn't believe what she had just seen. She became angry and ran away to her mother's house. For a while, she stayed away, trying to feel safe again. But before long, she returned to Graceland. Elvis said he was sorry, and she believed him. He seemed to really regret what he had done. During a trip to Hawaii in March 1977, things took another turn. Elvis became angry again, this time over something small. Ginger had mentioned that he was drinking too much juice, and when she left the room while he was still speaking, it set him off. He followed her into the next room and struck her on the side of her body. Ginger didn't expect it. That kind of behavior was new, even for Elvis. He looked different in that moment, like someone she didn't know. Still, she forgave him once more. She said his voice told her everything. He sounded sorry, and she wanted to believe he meant it. Ginger kept getting pulled back into Elvis's world. Even when he frightened her or made her feel small, she tried to see the man beneath the anger. She thought his regrets were real. Over and over again, she accepted his apologies, hoping things would improve. But those moments of peace never lasted long. There was always something else, something new that showed how much Elvis struggled to hold things together. She saw him wrestle with his own emotions, lash out when he felt ignored, and push people away even as he said he felt alone. Ginger stayed through it all, hoping love would be enough. But with every angry outburst and each apology, it became clear that the man she loved was slipping further away, and the world around him was falling apart piece by piece. However, that wasn't the only Elvis struggled with. There's another side that Ginger became very concerned about. The yellow packets. In late November 1976, just days after meeting Elvis Presley, Ginger Alden found herself in a San Francisco hotel room watching something that didn't sit right with her. One of Elvis's aides walked in and handed him a small yellow packet. Without any hesitation, Elvis swallowed the contents and told Ginger it would help him fall asleep. The next morning, another packet arrived. Elvis explained that it was a mix of vitamins, medication, aspirin, and sinus pills. Ginger noticed how these packets were delivered as casually as the jug of water that was always placed by his bed. It all seemed normal to everyone around him, but something didn't feel right. As time went by, Ginger slowly became more aware of how these medications were affecting Elvis. One night, she watched as one of the aides helped Elvis walk to the bathroom and back to bed. She stood by and started to wonder what was inside those yellow packets. She couldn't name any of the contents, but the effects looked too strong to ignore. Then, during a December performance, Elvis seemed to forget parts of the lyrics. That was a surprise to her. She began to think that the pills or maybe even pain medication might be interfering with his memory. What bothered her even more was that Elvis took these sleep aids no matter where he was, on stage, at home, or on a trip. At first, Ginger trusted that Dr. Nicopolis was watching over his health closely. She didn't step in. She assumed the doctor had everything under control, but things kept piling up. She noticed mood swings. One moment he was lighthearted, and the next he would lash out or pull away. Ginger started to believe that the stuff Elvis was taking on a regular basis were behind these unstable behaviors. One day, she finally spoke up. As Elvis asked for more medication, Ginger told him he didn't need it. He shook his head and told her she wouldn't understand. He tried to make her believe that he really did need it and that he couldn't help himself. After hearing what he said, Ginger didn't push too hard. But inside, she was thinking that maybe Elvis had taken these medications so often that they no longer worked the same way. Maybe that was why he needed more and more. All she could do was hope the medical team around him knew how to manage it. After 6 months together, Ginger's concern deepened. It was May, and Elvis had another tour coming up. As always, he seemed uneasy before hitting the road. When he couldn't sleep, he reached out for more medication. That was when Ginger began to see a pattern forming. She was worried not only about the immediate effects, but also about what this could do to him in the future. At times, it became clear to her that the substances were changing the way he acted. His reactions, his mood, his whole energy, it was different. Even though she tried to bring it up in gentle ways, she didn't feel like she had enough power to bring about any real change. She kept trying, but nothing seemed to shift. Then, the danger hit her hard. A phone call came one day, and Ginger rushed over to Graceland. When she walked into Elvis's room, she saw him lying on the bed with his eyes closed. An IV was hooked up to him. Dr. Nicopolis was sitting beside him. Charlie Hodge explained to Ginger that Elvis had returned from Las Vegas after taking too much medication. The scene crushed her. Seeing him in that condition broke something inside her, but she still didn't know how to help. She didn't know how to make the people around him stop feeding this cycle. On the morning of August 16, 1977, Ginger saw something that stayed with her forever. Elvis had trouble sleeping again and called for his first sleep packet at around 6:45 in the morning. Ricky Stanley brought it up. Elvis was still restless an hour later, so he called again. Ricky brought him a second packet. Ginger woke briefly as Elvis got up and walked to the bathroom with a book in his hand, saying he wanted to read. She turned back over and slept until about 2 in the afternoon. That was the last she saw him alive. Months later, in February 1978, Ginger had to appear before a grand jury. They were investigating Dr. Nicopolis and the way he had handled Elvis's medical care. At the courthouse, she ran into Nancy Brooks, the maid from Graceland. Nancy told her something Ginger hadn't heard before. Aunt Delta had reportedly given Elvis a 3rd packet of medication that morning. Ginger hadn't seen it happen. She had been asleep at the time, but hearing that added another heavy piece to the puzzle. Ginger lived through it all, watching helplessly as the man she loved slipped away. Although she tried to speak up, she never found a way to stop what was happening. Each day brought a new mix of substances, a new excuse, and a growing wall between his world and any chance of change. Ginger saw the damage growing behind it all, and could only stand by and hope it wouldn't end the way it eventually did. But her hope shattered. Meanwhile, there's an interesting contradiction about Ginger's actions after Elvis passed away. Contradictions about the after-event of Elvis Presley's demise. On the early morning of August 16, 1977, Ginger Alden and Elvis Presley returned to his bedroom after a short game of racquetball with Billy and Joe Smith. It was around 6 in the morning when they walked upstairs. Not long after, Elvis called down and asked for something to help them sleep. A mix was brought up for Ginger first, and then Elvis a packet of his usual sleep medications. Once they had everything, the couple got into bed and started flipping through a few new books Elvis had recently received. After a while, the medication began to take effect. They both drifted off. According to Ginger, she woke up about 2 hours later, around 8. She noticed Elvis calling downstairs again, this time asking for another dose to help him fall asleep. Ricky Stanley brought it up. Then Elvis and Ginger lay back down. Ginger soon fell asleep again. Later, around 9 in the morning, she woke up again. This time she saw Elvis sitting on the edge of the bed. He mentioned that he wanted to read, so he picked up a book and walked toward the bathroom.
It was like I had always seen Elvis be nervous before a tour and just having a little problem sleeping. And so there was nothing unusual about it.
Ginger closed her eyes again and went back to sleep, unaware that this would be the last conversation between them. The next time she opened her eyes, it was just past 2 in the afternoon. She noticed that Elvis hadn't returned to bed. She felt something was off, but she didn't think too much about it at first. She had started her period and needed to get to her own bathroom. While she was in there, she made 2 quick phone calls, one to her mother and another to a friend named Cindy. During both calls, she talked about how her cramps were bothering her and how she might not feel well enough to travel later that day. Elvis was supposed to leave for his tour, and Ginger had planned to join him. Around 20 minutes later, after finishing in the bathroom, Ginger stepped out and began looking for Elvis. She walked toward his bathroom. That was when she found him unconscious. She immediately called downstairs and asked for help. What followed next was a wave of panic, confusion, and heartbreak. However, in a book published years later in 1995, Billy Smith, Elvis's cousin, shared a completely different version of what happened that day. His version painted Ginger in a negative light. According to him, she may have already known Elvis was gone when she found him. He and another employee named Al Strada started putting together their own theory. They believed Ginger had first called her mother, not for comfort, but to figure out what they should do next. In their opinion, the two might have talked about what steps to take and possibly discussed how to turn the situation to their advantage. Billy claimed that after speaking to her mother, Ginger made another call, this time to a man named Jim Kirk. He was a freelance reporter who sometimes worked with the National Enquirer. According to Billy, Ginger had contacted Jim twice. He believed that she made a deal with the reporter to sell her version of the story for a large sum of money, $105,000. Both Ginger and her mother denied ever doing this, but Billy insisted that something didn't feel right. He pointed out that Ginger already knew Jim Kirk, as a few stories about her and Elvis had appeared in the Enquirer before. Back then, no one could figure out how those reporters got the information so fast, but Billy believed this was the answer. He even claimed that reporters and photographers had already flown in by the afternoon of August 16th, hours before the hospital made any public statement about Elvis's demise. According to Billy, when Ginger eventually called Al Strada upstairs, she was fully dressed and had her makeup done. That detail stood out to him. He believed she looked too polished for someone who claimed to have just woken up. In his mind, that meant she had enough time to prepare herself and possibly speak to the press before alerting the rest of the household. He figured she might have thought there was nothing more to lose, that Elvis was already gone, and selling her story was a chance to gain something from the situation. But when it came down to it, Billy's claims were full of guesses and assumptions. He used words like "it seems," "we think," "we guess," and "probably." Nothing he said could be backed up with clear facts. He never gave solid proof. It was all based on how things looked to him at the time. Others close to Elvis, like Lamar Fike, Marty Lacker, and Joe Esposito, also shared negative thoughts about Ginger. They seemed uncomfortable with the way Ginger had been part of Elvis's final days, and perhaps that shaped their views. But none of them had any strong evidence for what they claimed. Most of their opinions were based on feeling rather than fact. In the end, Ginger's version remained the most consistent and detailed account of what happened during Elvis's last day. Despite the rumors and accusations, no one ever proved that she had done anything wrong. What happened on that day remains tangled in sorrow, misunderstanding, and suspicion. Yet the truth about those final hours likely rests with the people who lived through them, and with the man who never got to explain it himself. Still, life continued. Life in Graceland. Afterwards. After Elvis Presley passed away, his body was placed in a coffin made of copper, lined carefully and built to be strong. It was extremely heavy, weighing close to 1,900 pounds. The casket was set near the front of Graceland so that fans could come in and see him one last time. More than 3,500 people walked through the house that day. They moved slowly, stopping for a moment to look at him and think about what he had meant to them. 2 days later, a private funeral was held inside the mansion. From then on, the house felt heavy. People struggled to hold themselves together. They found it hard to take in the fact that Elvis was really gone. But even after he passed, Graceland didn't stay empty. His family kept using the house, and it remained part of their lives. In 1993, Lisa Marie Presley officially became the owner of Graceland. She had turned 25 and now had full control of the home her father had worked hard to build. The property was now hers to manage, and it carried his memory in every corner. Just a short walk from the house, the meditation garden became Elvis's final resting place. His parents, Gladys and Vernon Presley, were buried there too. Not far from them lay his grandmother, Minnie Mae. Later on, Lisa Marie's son, Benjamin Keogh, was also buried in the garden. Even Elvis's twin brother, Jesse Garin, who had been stillborn, was honored with a special memorial stone nearby. Over the years, this garden turned into a deeply meaningful part of the property. After Elvis passed, Vernon Presley was given the job of managing the estate, but he didn't have much time left. He passed away just 2 years later in 1979. Before his passing, he handed the responsibility to Priscilla Presley. Though they had divorced, she took on the duty of looking after the estate for their daughter, who was still very young. It wasn't easy. Keeping Graceland running costs around $500,000 every year. Most of Elvis's fortune had already been used up, and Lisa Marie's inheritance had fallen to just about $1 million. The money was going down fast, and the bills kept adding up. There was pressure to sell the property just to cover the costs. People around them began to talk about putting Graceland on the market, but Priscilla refused to let go of it. She took time to learn how other historical places stayed open. Some had been turned into museums and tourist spots. That idea just made sense to her. She reached out to Jack Soden and asked him to come on board as CEO. Together, they made a plan to open Graceland to the public. It was a risky move, but they decided to go ahead. On June 7, 1982, the gates of Graceland opened to visitors for the first time. In only 1 month, they had earned back every dollar they spent preparing the house for tours. The success was far bigger than expected. What used to be Elvis's private home quickly became a major attraction for fans around the world. Priscilla stepped up to lead Elvis Presley Enterprises, taking charge of the business until Lisa Marie grew older. Over the years, the estate's value rose higher and higher, eventually reaching hundreds of millions. Each year, when the date of Elvis's passing comes around, thousands of fans return to Graceland. The event has become known as Elvis Week. People take part in fan meetups, special programs, and a memorial service at St. Paul's Church. But the most emotional moment comes during the candlelight vigil. As the sun goes down, people begin walking through the estate with candles in their hands toward Elvis's grave. In 1997, during the 20th anniversary, news teams from across the globe came to cover the event. In 2002, for the 25th anniversary, even heavy rain didn't stop 40,000 people from showing up. In 2015, around 30,000 fans returned for the 38th anniversary. 2 years later, in 2017, the crowd for the 40th anniversary was expected to hit 50,000. For the first time, the organizers introduced a small entry fee to help cover the cost of security. The crowds had grown too large, and extra help was needed to keep everything in order. For many people, going to Graceland means more than just taking a trip. Some save money for years just to be able to go. Once inside, they put on headphones and begin the guided tour. They walk from room to room, seeing Elvis's guitars, clothes, awards, and other personal items. Each part of the house tells part of his story, not just the success and happiness, but also the struggles he faced. It gives people a full picture of his life, both the rise and the fall. When they reach the meditation garden, many stop to pray or stand in silence. Some sing his songs under their breath. Others leave flowers, pictures, or short letters by his grave. The wall around the estate is covered with messages from fans. Many write about how Elvis helped them through hard times. His presence is still felt, not only through his music or movies, but through the deep connection his fans still hold. Graceland continues to carry that feeling, keeping the memory of Elvis Presley alive with every single visitor who walks through its doors. What are your thoughts on Ginger Alden's description of Elvis Presley? Do you think she was honest? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.